We'll start today's Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrutam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiret Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Hare Krishna Dandat Pranam. Today we completing chapter 28 Gyan Yog, shloka number 36 to 44. Etavan Atma Sammoha Yat Vikalpa Kevale Atmanrute Swa Atmanam Avalambana Yasya Hi Yat Nama Kruti Bhihi Grahyam Panchavarnam Abhaditam Verthena Api Arthavada Ayam Dvayam Panditamaninam Yogina Apakvayogasya Yunjata Kaya Uttitahi Upasargai Vihaneta Tatra Ayam Vita Vidhi Yoga Dharanaya Kanchita Asane Dharana Anvitehi Tapaha Mantra Aushadhehi Kanchita Upasargan Vinirdahet Kanchinam Mama Anudayanena Nama Sankirtanadibihi Yoga Ikshvar Anuvritya Va Hanat Ashubhadana Shanehi Kechiddeham Imam Dhiraha Sukalpam Vayasistiram Vidaya Vivida Upayai Atayunjanti Siddhaye Nahi Tat Kushaladrutyam Tada Ayasai Aparthaka Antavatvat Sharirasya Balasya Eva Vanaspate Yogam Nishevata Nityam Kaya Cheta Kalpatam Iyata Tat Shraddha Dhyanata Na Matiman Na Yogam Utsrujamat Para Yogacharyam Imam Yogi Vicharanamat Apashraya Na Antaraya Vyaneta Nispruha Swasukha Anubhu. Translation and purport by the Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada. Whatever duality is pursued in the self is ended, such supposed duality has no basis to rest upon apart from one's own soul. The duality of the five material elements is pursued only in terms of names and forms. Those who say this duality is real are pseudo scholars, mainly proposing fanciful theories without basis in fact. The physical body of the enduring yogi who is not yet mature in his practice may sometimes be overcome by various disturbances. Therefore, the following process is recommended. Some of these obstructions may be counteracted by yogic meditation or by sitting postures practiced together with concentration on controlled breathing, and others may be counteracted by special austerities, mantras, or medicinal herbs. These inauspicious disturbances can be gradually removed by constant remembrance of me, by congregational hearing and chanting of my holy names, or by following in the footsteps of great masters of yoga. By various methods, some yogis free the body free from disease and old age and keep it perpetually youthful. Thus, they engage in yoga for the purpose of achieving material mystic perfection. The mystic bodily perfection is not valued very highly by those expert in transcendental knowledge. Indeed, they consider endeavor for such perfection useless, since the soul, like a tree, is permanent, but the body, like a tree's fruit, is subject to destruction. Although the physical body may be improved by various processes of yoga, an intelligent person who has dedicated his life to me does not place his faith in in the prospect of perfecting his physical body through yoga. And in fact, he gives up such procedures. The yogi who has taken shelter of me remains free from hankering because he experiences the happiness of the soul within. Thus, while executing this process of yoga, he is never defeated by obstacles. Purport with Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As explained in verse 33 of this chapter, the eternal self is neither assumed nor lost. Since every living entity is an eternal reality, the word vikalpa or duality here refers to the mistaken idea that the spirit soul is partly composed of matter in the form of the gross body or subtle mind. It is thus that foolish persons consider the material body or mind to be an intrinsic or fundamental component of the self. In fact, the living entity is pure spirit without any tinge of matter. Consequently, the false ego, which is generated by the false identification of matter, is a mistaken identity imposed upon the pure spirit soul. The sense of ego or I am, in other words, the sense of one's individual identity, comes from the spirit soul because there is no other possible basis for such self-awareness. By studying one's false sense of ego, one can analytically understand that there is a pure ego, which is expressed by the words Aham Brahmasmi. I am pure spirit soul. One can easily understand in a similar way that there is a supreme spirit soul, the personality of Godhead, who is the omniscient controller of everything. Such understanding in Krishna consciousness constitutes perfect knowledge as described here by the Lord. Material names and forms, subject as they are to creation and annihilation, have no permanent existence and so do not constitute essential, fundamental principles of reality. The material world consists of variegated transformation of the potency of God. Although God is real and his potency is real, the particular forms and names that temporarily or circumstantially appear have no ultimate reality. Gross ignorance occurs when the conditioned soul imagines himself to be material or a mixture of matter and spirit. Some philosophers argue that the eternal soul in contact with matter is permanently transformed and that the false ego represent a new and permanent reality of the soul. Srila Goswami replies that spirit is the living superior energy of the Lord, whereas matter is the inferior unconscious energy of the Lord, and that these two energies thus possess opposite qualities as with light and darkness. The superior living entity and inferior matter therefore cannot possibly merge into a common existence since they eternally possess opposite and incompatible characteristics. The hallucination of a mixture of matter and spirit is called illusion. It becomes specifically manifest as false ego, which identifies with the specific material body or mind created by illusion. Clearly, those scientists and philosophers who are embedded in gross ignorance cannot be real scientists and philosophers. The simple criterion of spiritual self-awareness unfortunately eliminates a huge percentage of modern so-called scientists and philosophers who bury their foolish noses in the Lord's material energy without any knowledge of or interest in the Lord himself. Having described the process of cultivating knowledge, the Lord now gives instruction to the yogic whose body may be disturbed by disease or other impediments. Those inferior yogis who are attached to the body and bodily experience exercises are often incomplete in their realization, and thus the Lord here offers them some assistance according to Srila Sridhar Swami. By meditation on the Supreme Lord, one can overcome lust mental disturbances and by following in the footsteps of great transcendentalists, one can overcome hypocrisy and other types of mental imbalance. The process described herein is meant to fulfill one's material desires, not to bring one transcendental knowledge. Therefore, this process cannot be accepted as devotional service to the Lord. According to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, despite all such mystic perfection, the material body will ultimately die. Actually, eternal youth and happiness are available only on the spiritual platform of Krishna consciousness. The example given here is of a tree that seasonally bears fruit. The fruit exists for a very short time, whereas the tree may exist for thousands of years. Similarly, the spirit soul is eternal, whereas the material body, even when preserved as long as possible, is destroyed relatively quickly. The body should never be equated with the eternally existing spirit soul. Those who are actually intelligent, who actually have spiritual knowledge, are not interested in material mystic perfections. A devotee of the Lord keeps his body fit by eating nourishing Krishna Prasadam, by maintaining a clean and regulated life, free from unnecessary anxiety, and by chanting and dancing before the deity of the Lord. When a devotee is sick, he accepts medical treatment by normal methods. But beyond this, there is no need to absorb one's mind and physical body in the name of so-called yoga practice. Ultimately, one must accept the destiny that has been ordained by the Lord. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the Supreme Lord has briefly described to Uddhava the essential wisdom of all the Upanishads with the conclusion that pure devotional service to the Lord is the real means of ultimate liberation. In this regard, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur emphasizes that although Hatha Yoga and Hatha Yogis and Raj Yogis try to make progress along their prescribed path, they confront obstacles and often fail to achieve their desired goals. However, one who surrenders to the Supreme Lord will certainly be victorious on his spiritual path back home, back to Godhead. Thus end the purpose. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Ena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manabhishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guroho Sri Tapadakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavancha Sri Rupam Sagrajata Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitancha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhecha Krupa Sindhube Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Dandavat Pranam. Today we completing this chapter Jnana Yoga and tomorrow we will start Bhakti Yoga. In this chapter, they told us about the Jnana Yoga, but ultimately they describing in last that who surrenders to the Supreme Lord, means who becomes the duty of the Lord, will certainly be victorious on his spiritual path back home, back to Godhead. That's most important point they suggest to us. Prabhuji will tell you in a detail. Hare Krishna Dandat Pranam. Vancha kalpatarubhe cha कृपा सिंधुभे एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So it's basically actually a fact that it's only because of the mercy of the devotees that we can ever get knowledge. And the mercy of the devotee comes when the mercy of bona fide spiritual master is there. So, with the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master, we can understand the absolute truth and appreciate that this material body, its extensions, they're all non spiritual. So, desisting from engagement in material sense gratifications, one can become satisfied in the ecstasy of the self. Just as the sun remains untouched by the coming and going of the clouds, the discriminating liberated person remains unaffected by the activities of his senses. However, it is important that we become perfectly fixed in Bhakti Yoga, the pure devotional service to Krishna. We should carefully avoid contacting material sense objects. An aspiring devotee may meet various obstacles and fall down. But we saw Krishna explaining that in the next life he'll continue his practice because of what he has already accomplished. He'll never again become bound up by the laws of karma. And the man who is liberated and established in discrimination will under no circumstances seek false enjoyment by indulging in material activities. He knows that the soul is changeless, that any contrary conception is sheer illusion. But it may happen that during the immature stage of spiritual practice, we may suffer physical disease or other disturbances. And if that happens, the Vedas enjoin that he can certainly take proper measures to eradicate the problem. For example, the prescribed remedies for lust and other enemies of the mind are meditation on the Supreme Lord and Sankirtana, the loud chanting of his names. The remedy of the disease of false ego is rendering service to the Supreme Lord, saintly devotees. By practicing yoga, maybe some non devotees can keep their bodies youthful and fit, may even get mystic perfections or long life. But these attainments are worthless because they are of the material body only. An intelligent person is therefore not interested in these yogic practices. Instead, we try to take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, and an aspiring devotee who is seriously dedicated to the Lord rids himself of all disturbances and becomes empowered to attain the highest perfection, the full bliss of spiritual life. So, Krishna has been explaining this wonderful science to us so that we understand how to differentiate between this material body and the Shashwat spiritual soul, this duality which is perceived, the duality of the five material elements. Those who say that this duality is real are pseudo scholars without any basis. So we have to understand all these aspects. So when Krishna is talking about Vikalpa, it is not alternate. The Vikalpa there in his discussions means dualities. The sense of ego or I am, the sense of individual identity. This is coming from spirit soul because there is nothing else which can explain why we have self awareness. But then we should not get carried away by it because by being carried away and studying one's false sense of ego, then there can also be a pure ego. And we may start expressing it, Brahmasmi. So similarly, there is Supreme Spirit Soul, who is omniscient controller of everything. So this understanding constitutes perfect knowledge. And this is what is being expressed by Lord to us. Anything and everything else does not hold value. So this simple criteria of spiritual self-awareness unfortunately eliminates a huge percentage of whatever is being propaganda made by the new age scientists and philosophers who actually bury their foolish noses in Lord's material energy without any knowledge. And that is why Prabhupada explains and tells us that the hallucination of mixture of water and spirit is illusion. And this becomes manifest as false ego. So we have to ensure that we are neither hallucinating, not getting covered by illusion. So Krishna, having expressed the process of cultivating knowledge, also gives instructions to the yogi who, during such cultivation, may have some impediments. Many a times, if we are still having any attachment to the body or bodily exercises, we may remain incomplete in our realization. So Krishna says that for them, there is a process wherein they can counteract everything by yogic meditation or by sitting in specific postures with concentration and controlled breathing, special austerities, mantras, or medicinal herbs. So, by constant remembrance of Krishna, all the inauspicious disturbances can be removed. By congregational hearing, chanting, or by following the footsteps of great masters of yoga. कश्चिन्मा अनुध्यानेन नाम संकीर्तनादिभिः योगेश्वर अनुवृत्त्या वा हन्यात् अशुभदान शनैः. This is a very important shloka which makes us understand how we have to follow the footsteps of the acharyas and overcome all impediments so that we are strong enough to go back home, back to Godhead. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, despite of mystic perfections, the material body will ultimately die. So if we are looking for actual eternal youth and happiness, then that is possible only on the spiritual platform of Krishna consciousness. So mystic bodily perfections are not to be valued. Indeed, the transcendentalists consider endeavor for such perfection useless. Because the soul, like a tree, is permanent, but the body, like a tree's fruit, is subject to destruction. So this example becomes very important, which Krishna is giving. That the fruits will come and they drop, so the bodies will come and they will go away, but the spirit soul will always exist. So those who are actually intelligent, those who have actual spiritual knowledge, will not be interested in any material mystic perfections. So though these perfections, these yoga systems may give us a better controlled body. But then if we have faith in Krishna, all such things are useless for us. We keep our body fit by eating Krishna Prasadam, by maintaining clean regulated life, free from unnecessary anxiety, and by dancing and dancing before the deity of the Lord. This is what is actually best way to live life. That we should be eating and having a regulated life. We should give up unnecessary anxiety. Otherwise, we'll keep on ourselves troubling. Oh, appraisal times are there. What will be my appraisal? Will there be promotions like my colleagues to me or not? That is not required to be taken by a devotee. We have to accept the destiny that has been ordained by the Lord. And then the real happiness will come. If you have taken shelter of Krishna, we will remain free from anchoring because we experience the happiness of the soul within. Thus, while executing the process of yoga, will never be defeated by obstacles. According to Sri Sridhar Swami, Krishna has actually explained Uddhava the essential wisdom of all the Upanishads, with the conclusion that Shuddha Prema Bhakti is the real means of ultimate liberation. So let us follow his instructions so that we surrender to Krishna completely as per his order. सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वं सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः. So let us surrender to the Supreme Lord, and then we'll certainly be victorious on the spiritual path back home, back to Godhead. Well, this is what even Sanjaya understood at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, wherein he declares, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Dhanurdhara Arjuna, Tatra there is only going to be victory and auspiciousness. Thus, this is the Jnana Yoga is meant to make us confident that we are on the right path back home to backward. Hare Krishna. Dandavat